Microphone check, 1 2. What is this? It's the 5'7" assassin in the podcast business. I am your host, Rohan Patra, the rap music plug at your service.
Here we are again at the end of a rainbow.
The Rap Music Plug podcast presented by QLC TV is the remedy to the I don't have anything good to listen to problem. Through in-depth album and song reviews, as well as artist interviews and general rap commentary sprinkled in between on all of what the mainstream and underground rap scenes have to offer, this is your one-stop shop to knowing what to add to your queue, play next, or pop into your record player. Welcome to the show. What is up, family? Today I am joined by a beloved musical act from the Windy City, Chicago, whose music career has spanned multiple decades, whose thoughtful and diverse talents have really impressed me over the past couple of years. His most recent achievements being 2020's How Do You Sleep at Night with Montana Macks, the Blue Beach EP with Killer Kane that, for those who listen to the show, know how much I've loved, and his latest album with Iceberg Theory, Smoke Detector, an album that just dropped this past week, so it's very fresh. We'll get into the creation of these great projects and much more as I converse with the insanely talented Rich Jones. How you doing, man?
I'm great. What an intro. Thank you so much for having me, man. This is great. I know we've been chatting for a few years now, but it's cool to actually talk to you proper. So thank you for having me, man.
No, I'm really appreciative of you coming on. I know that initial conversation, if I remember correctly, like that was very, I really, you left a good impression on me because I think you were talking about your like family lives in Ottawa where I currently live.
Yeah.
It was nice. I was
Yeah,
like,
man.
And that was early on too. I hadn't had as many conversations with artists at that point. That was like early 2021.
For sure. One thing I'll say, I've been lucky to travel around both for family and for music or for whatever. So I don't know. I when I see a city that I know like a little bit about, it's always like, yeah, I'm curious to see what someone's, perspective is of it, or just kind of what their deal is, where do they fit in and all that. So I will say, it's been a long time since I've visited, so I'm sure a bunch of stuff's changed in like the last 5 years. But it's always a fun spot to go and see them. Obviously, if I come back, I'd love to actually see you. We'll go to the French Market. We'll go to the Obama exhibit that's been running since 2008 and have sugar cookies. It'll be such a fun
Oh
time.
God. Well, actually, yeah, this is actually officially the last interview I'll be conducting in Ottawa because I'm moving to Toronto in a couple weeks.
Oh shit.
Yeah.
AKA film Chicago, because they film in Toronto to like fit for Chicago.
Oh yeah. Oh,
So
I know New York is I know actually Suits, if you know that show.
I feel like I've heard of it.
It had actually I don't know any of the actors' names, but it was a pretty popular show on USA. Their office I think is supposed to be Manhattan, but it's like some office downtown Toronto.
Oh, cool. I feel like there was a show with Jay Baruchel and Eric Andre. I forget what it's called. It's like an FX show, and it's supposedly in Chicago. But I'm looking at the city. I'm like, there's no way this is Chicago, and this has got to be Toronto or somewhere.
I haven't watched that show, but it's the one that's like boyfriend. He's like he's like a supporting actor, Eric Andre, I think in that.
Yeah, he's like the best friend who's like a Lothario and just kind of a wild man, and then Jay is kind of like the hapless, like I want a lady kind of guy. Yeah. Either way, it was like super strange to be like, wow, like this just looks nothing like where it's supposed to be. But whatever, man, they're having fun, so we'll enjoy it. But
so I want to start first with like, what was your entry point into hip hop?
I mean, as a kid, I feel like, we just heard it all over the place. Honestly, I just have a vivid memory of like being like 2 or 3 years old with my best friend, and we're singing Tootsie Roll by the 69 Boys, like with our parents on the way in to like go see a play or something like that. I don't know. It just, whether it was on the radio or whatever, I don't know. That was like a very vivid, like, oh, I like this. I don't know what this is, but I like this. And then like kind of the evolution of that. I know at the time there was a TV station called The Box that was kind of like a hub for people to watch music videos, and I feel like you could call in, and like this is a little bit, I didn't have any sort of choice in I wasn't old enough to make these sorts of choices in terms of like calling in or requesting
Mm-hmm.
videos or anything. And to make it even funnier, the station it was on, we like barely got reception for it. So it was like kind of buzzy, but like that was the first time I saw Cross by Bone Thugs and Harmony, or like Hey by Crucial Conflict. Those videos just kind of like channel surfing, and then they would be on, and like I couldn't really make it out just because it wasn't like a great quality. But I was like, yeah,
Mm-hmm.
this is awesome. Like, what is this? And so, fast forward to when I'm a little bit older, one thing that I really latched onto and got excited by was when I discovered that Chicago had like a local underground scene, which I mean, that's existed since the 80s, right? But my entry point to this is like 2002, 2003. And, at that point, especially in the era when like we don't have endless access to music or movies or anything like today, you really had to like figure out how to get the thing that you wanted. So like for me to even listen to a song that I wanted to listen to, if it wasn't on the radio, like I would go to like record label websites and they would have like a snippet of the song um that would just play, and so that was as good as it got. And then like LimeWire and stuff was like a thing, but like at the end of the day, I just wanted to find a way to connect with the culture and with whatever scene was near me. And luckily, there was a pretty active independent record scene, a lot of smaller labels around that time that were moving around, like Moleman, EV Records, and the like. And yeah, from there it was I got really hype about it because like unlike artists that you'd see on the TV or like on MTV or on the rare cases, because I didn't have cable either. I'm kind of getting a
Mm-hmm.
lot of the secondhand at friends' houses if we're hanging out or whatever. And like, one thing I immediately appreciated is when you're talking to people that actually live in your city, you can talk to them. Like you
Yeah.
can actually like potentially forge a relationship and get to know them. And I think like as a supporter and someone who wanted badly to, be supportive of the music that was coming from here, I think it was really cool. It's to kind of get so excited so quickly. And we also had a couple of events that I think were really helpful in kind of setting the tone in terms of kind of, I guess, bringing people together so you could get kind of not like a Cliff's Notes, but you could get like kind of a all everybody's here at once kind of thing. It was Mole Men specifically was organizing an event called Chicago Rocks at the Metro, which is like a pretty big venue. Um, and so like their artists would be on the bill. Galapagos 4 like Quell and all them would bill, or any of the artists affiliated with that. And et cetera. It just would go on from there. And it was a really great way to get like a sample of like all the different acts that existed at the time. And especially when you're like 18 or 19. I mean, one ticket to the show gets you X amount of shows basically versus having to like and plus also being underage too. Like where can I go to see this stuff if it's
Right.
not like
Yeah.
all ages or like, something like that? Because a lot of the time, it's going to be 21 and up. I know the
Yeah. It's in a
club.
bar or club.
It's
Yeah.
exactly. And like the club, yeah, I remember like one of the clubs that was by my house, the Abbey Pub. I know like I feel like Wu-Tang, like a version of like three members of Wu-Tang would like play there occasionally. And, you'd get shows like that. But again, I was too young to be able to go in there. So that was kind of rough in that way. But yeah, so as far as entry points, like about 15, 16, I really start diving into the local music scene. I start buying local music and really trying to get behind that and support those artists and try to get to know those artists as best I could. So by the time I'm starting to get active as an artist myself in terms of recording and everything, like starting around like 17, 18, it's not like I could hang. I wasn't very good, but at the very least you start at least thinking about the possibilities of what you can do,
Yeah.
because you possibly maybe do your first little performance or open mic. I know that was actually one of the if we want to talk about real entry points. Let's talk about what when I started finding my community, my people off bat. I got so lucky because I got introduced to this like it was like a bi-weekly open mic at this place called the Lyricist Loft, which was downtown. And brother Mike, who actually he mentored a lot of like people like Chance and I think Mick Jenkins or some people like that. Maybe I'm wrong on that one, but a guy who had done a lot for the youth. This was formerly his space, and a friend of mine had taken it over. And so that was where I first met Gyroscope, and that's where I first
Oh,
met
nice.
a bunch of the guys that would become Tomorrow Kings, like Ill Subliminal and Sketchwin 85, and like just all
That's
these
ill.
people that are like my brothers now, and like I'm just this kid who, really wants it but isn't very good. But they noted that I had a good spirit about me, I guess, to them, and they appreciated that I was earnest. And that's something, I'm very grateful for them, that they embraced me and brought me in and started teaching me and supporting me. Because it's funny what just like a little bit of positive reinforcement can do in terms of like putting someone on the right path to work harder and get better at their craft. And this is also, it's so funny because that summer is also the time that I reconnected with Montana Macks too. We had known each other like years prior. We briefly went to high school together, and so he was the guy, the older kid, that was putting me on to like all sorts of rap shit, whether it was stories or music to check out and whatnot. And so when we reconnect, when I'm 18, we start, I had a I had a knee surgery, and so I was laid up for the whole summer. So all my friends are all having fun and whatnot. For the most of the summer, I'm just in bed resting and doing physical therapy. But I'm on the phone with him almost every day talking music. So in those phone calls, he's teaching me song structure. He's teaching me, the history of this. Again, things to look out for, things to listen to. And, really the roots of it all start like, summer 2006 in that sense, in terms of like meeting the people that would become my family, meeting the people that would,
Right.
I'm very lucky. Most of the folks that I rocked with back then, I still rock with now, which, that's not typical in our
Mm-hmm.
business necessarily. There's a lot of changeover and wishy-washy shit. So, yeah, very, 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 very grateful that I had those influences early on, and that, they have, are still part of my life.
That's no, that's really incredible. So one thing that I've been really happy about is that through the pod, I've had the privilege of interviewing some other artists from the Chicago area, Green Slime, Def C.
Hell
And
yeah.
one thing I remarked, which I kind of found interesting, was that based on my cursory knowledge of not of the Chicago scene, although it's still so much more I could learn, but more in terms of the actual inner workings of the community, because I'm not from there. From an outsider perspective, I remarked like, damn, it seems like you guys really put on for each other, like at least this underground scene. Like I always hear artists like Solar Five or something is going to shout out you and like Def C. I remember before I even, I think before I even heard of Green Slime, I heard of him through a Def C thing, which I heard through Iceberg Theory, all this great connections. And one thing that they told me is that it isn't always the case, or it hasn't always been the case. It's kind of a crab in the bucket mentality has been
Hmm.
a stereotype or at least a stigma with it. So, like, how is your, I guess you've kind of spoken to how your experience has been, but I guess more specifically, have you noticed a change that it's
So
become more supportive over time?
that's a really interesting topic, because like, so the era that we're all kind of, because we're all roughly the same age, right? And like, so it's been super cool to see like Solar Five and Slime and Def C, and like all of us, like, A, still doing it, B, doing it better than ever. And also, yeah, to your point, like, it feels really great to see the ways that we're kind of all big upping each other and supporting each other, because like the era we came up in specifically, you know was, to some of us at least, or I think, so if you were around, it wasn't uncommon to hear someone call it, like, call Chicago Haterville, in terms of like people not fucking with each other, or like it being a difficult market to break into. And like, I remember it was a really big deal. There was a rapper, uh Long Shot, who it was a massive deal that he did a project called Civil War, that paired North Side and South Side artists together to make a mixtape. And they did like two of those. That it was in the Tribune. Like, it was, there was like some interest around it. And it was a big deal to have that sort of thing, because there was definitely a disconnect. I think one thing, obviously some things change, some things stay the same. I think we've had periods of more synergy and more kind of inclusion right now. I think especially with the pandemic and everything kind of making a lot of us hermits, I think it's a bit more fragmented again in a lot of respects. But um I think to your point of seeing us all kind of supporting each other, that's what gives me, that's what keeps me feeling good about this, is knowing that, like, hey, like, we're focusing on our shit and our people. And like, for my part of it all, like, I ran a hip hop monthly for like 8 or 9 years. And that was all kind of in service of trying to bring in the different styles of the genre into the room. So you might have, I guess, like, I hate this fucking word, but like a conscious MC or something with like, more street stuff or whatever. And like finding ways to blend those fan bases together. So hopefully, they would be coming up because they know they're going to get an eclectic music experience, or like an eclectic hip hop experience in terms of the types of artists
Yeah.
that they're going to be presented with. But yeah, I mean, like, even so, even with the best intentions, it can be very tough to get folks to line up and show up for those sorts of things. I think one thing that my dad loves to point out is, like, we're, in terms of like what we value celebrity wise, it's very much a sports town, where like your athletes are kind of like, I think, the big dogs. And I think, also living in Chicago in the 90s with like a Michael Jordan, I mean,
Yeah,
that
you
that
got the
really
Bulls
sets
dynasty. Yeah.
that's a larger than life sort of person in so many ways. So I think, like, it's difficult to um argue that point. But I think then you look at, like, say, we don't necessarily have media like the Breakfast Club or like an LA Leakers or something, that people, when they come to Chicago, they're going to do that show because they know that they're going to get those listeners and that, that viewer base or whatever. So like, I think we struggle in I guess creating reasons for people to come here, and then also to celebrate artists. And then on top of that, it can be so hard to get your music out of this city, that you could be a fucking legend here and you could be an amazing artist, but it's like the walls are just so high that if you don't pop nationally, it's kind of like, I don't want to say it's a you ain't shit kind of deal, but like,
Hmm.
it's definitely, like a kind of, oh yeah, he does his thing, whereas like in other cities where there is more of that structure of media and kind of the things that would help, like a hype machine of sorts. um I think, especially, and then when you also have the industry literally in your town, like a New York or an LA based artist or whatever, I think you're going to see more of that national understanding of them. Whereas from here, it depends, I guess, on what press agent you have, or if you have a label that's going to put you out there, if you can do that. It's, and also in this stage, who fucking knows how to make it happen? It seems like so much of this has all been decentralized and has kind of been removed from any sort of like one main core experience that we all go to. Like, so I was talking
Yeah.
to someone about, like, they brought up Jay Electronica as an example of a guy who's just himself and whatnot. And I said, yeah, that's great. He can be who he wants to be, like, with his art and whatnot. But make no mistake, he was on the cover of magazines when magazines really
Yeah,
mattered.
I think
So
Jay
like,
Electronica is truly one of the worst like ways to learn something from, like,
yeah,
oh, this is a way forward. Like, what are you even talking about? This guy's a his story is amazing, but it is so
right,
unreplicable. Like the
sure.
last sustainability, like
Well, it's
marry a Rothschild too. That's a
I
good
know
way.
it's that's a great way to go. Well, I guess to that point though, I think it's kind of similar to, I think, what one of the, I think it might have been Punch from TDE was saying, like, you're not going to see another like superstar artist necessarily because of like a Rolling Stone cover doesn't mean what it used to mean. Like, not everyone
True.
even has a fucking TV set that will watch like Jimmy Kimmel or like the late night TV thing that would break an artist at one point. I mean,
Hmm.
it's tough to say what'll actually get eyes. I mean, like, TikTok obviously is, seeming to be one way to do it. But again, that's not a unified human experience. It's not like everyone coming together to watch the moon landing or something. It's just like, so how do you create that? Especially in a place like this where you don't have those built-in sort of media centers. So yeah, I think that's the crab in a bucket mentality right there, is because we're all fighting for the same resources essentially. And um yeah, so that can get a bit cutthroat. And luckily, I think one thing that's been really heartening to see is, like, especially when you see a label like Closed Sessions or Filthy Analects. And I know like I Am God, I think, has got that No Mediocre label. If I
Mm-hmm.
if I messed up the name, I'm sorry. I'm sorry, I Am God. But like you start to see those sorts of things happening, and that's really exciting to me because that's at least creating nucleuses of things that could
Infrastructure,
get
yeah.
infrastructure. And then also, depending on how the music goes, in my mind, like you could see the beginnings of cult followings based on what's released and how you release it. And then, yeah, that's a whole other conversation. I think about this shit all the time. So
No,
I
but I
really,
like
yeah,
where your mind is at there with the labels, because like I think it's definitely valid. Like there's a huge stigma now with labels, understandably so, but I think there's a huge difference between signing to like a Atlantic Records and signing to, or I don't know how you, yeah, signing or working with, collaborating with, making an arrangement with one of these indie labels. That obviously indie labels can be shady too, but the idea is that I think there is something to be said about having a consolidated place where, as a fan, I'm not only a fan of the artist, I just know the label. Like classic is a backwoods, right? But like for people that like, I love Akai Solo. Like he's one of my favorite artists right now. But if I didn't know him and I was just a fan of like a Lucid, Woods, Curly Castro, let's say, I am 100% expecting this new Akai Solo album that's supposed to drop on Backwoods at some point this year. I'm like, okay, I'm a fan of Backwoods. Like I just know everything they put out is quality. That stamp, that
exactly.
idea of having a stamp, just like they had with Death Row, just like they had with other great kind of moments in terms of a label actually creating quality, like that's powerful, because then you don't have to have, as an individual, necessarily this huge following to make some money and get some success. Like you can just collaborate with a reputable brand, a reputable label, and
Yep.
then that it just kind of feeds itself that way. So I really agree. That's really important.
Yeah, not and I think it's something that, like, at least in terms of Chicago, I think the most impactful examples we have, I think, in terms of the ways those labels have then been able to work inside of, like, I guess, like a larger ecosystem of music is like, I mean, I guess unfortunately in this case, I think you're going to see more rock labels traditionally. Like I think, that scene has done a really good job of developing lineages between different artists. I mean, that's one thing that I won't lie is kind of frustrating because, like, I think the leg up there is if you're part of like that certain circle of artists and musicians or that genre, I feel like they're more readily there to resource share or to, like, provide like support or cheerleading everything. I mean, I think one thing it's been frustrating to see artists like just getting started, and they can be really dope. I'm not trying to take anything away from anybody, but like, I feel like in hip hop, as a hip hop artist, I feel like we got to jump through so many hoops to get the same shit that somebody who's like drinking buddies with somebody else in like the rock community,
Yeah.
like, it's like, oh yeah, like you can go play this sick show. And then, I think that also is indicative though of a very strong kind of general community around that, though, you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Whereas I think, like, with our shit being more fragmented, there's a smaller base that you're going towards that doesn't, again, that doesn't necessarily have those connections. And so I think, like, I'm not trying to take shots at anybody that's out here getting it. If anyone's getting anything out here, you earned it because you got it, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's not some sort of like weird thing. I mean, and also, what do you end up doing with it? That's the other thing. I've seen people get amazing looks and fumble them just because they don't know what to do with it. So again, I
Right.
don't begrudge anybody's success. I want to stress that very thoroughly because this is such a thankless business in so many ways that if you get anything to cheer about, like, congrats, like, please be happy. I don't want to
Yeah.
come off as like a miserable prick, but yeah, I just think I think the next step in my mind is that stamp of quality that you're talking about. I think the labels here, I think, need to figure out how to, I guess, transcend a bit, or kind of like not move away from like the hip hop scene as much. We have to also start trying to find casual listeners, just people that want to generally be entertained. Because that's the other thing is, like, a lot of these artists, like a Def C, a Slime, a Solar Five, myself, we're all amazing performers. That's the other thing. And like,
Mm-hmm.
I think if you're at a rap show, there's a good chance that like half the crowd are rappers and they're kind of like, I wish I was up there,
Yeah.
you know. And been that guy. I get it. It's tough, but like I think like one thing that helped me a lot and really helped move my career forward is I started performing not just for hip hop audiences. Like I would do like musical guest spots at like variety shows or like comedy shows, stuff like that. Stuff that would make me like a unicorn essentially,
That's
versus like
interesting.
I'm one of 10 people on this lineup or I'm one of 5 rappers on this lineup.
I'm curious to know on that note, because I find that idea of like performing in places that you don't always typically see a rap show. I think that's a good key for people. Like, what are some other, and you can expand on that experience more, but what are some things you've learned throughout your kind of journey and being
Um,
persistent and dedicated to pushing your career forward?
I think being an honorable, good person goes a really long way in the long term, especially. So cutting corners and being shitty and scheming and staining people and all that, that's a great way for some short wins that in the long term will probably be in the same spot you were in the first place. So I'd say as someone who's really had to stick with it and really probe the reasons why I do this, and in the midst of just like some of the like most thankless moments, it's something that I just think staying true to yourself, and I think really paying attention to who's around you, what kind of folks you're running with, because I mean their reputation or the things that they do that can rub off on you. And so I've been very intentional about the relationships I've made and who I keep around, because at the end of the day, like if you're in my circle, your family, like Olive Garden. Uh but no, really though, like I take that shit seriously, and I don't just bring people into my world lightly. So I think, yeah, really thinking hard about the relationships you're building, and I think also assessing what those people's goals are, like what they're trying to do. Because like I know when I started doing music, I was in a hip hop trio with it was me and 2 of my other friends, and we had a lot of fun and we did some really cool music. But I think ultimately, of the 3 of us, I wanted a music career. I really
Mm,
thought this is what I want to do. And the other guys, and this is the best part, we are great. We are great friends. And it didn't affect our ability to be people and to be, on good terms with another. But it was definitely something where um when it's all said and done, they wanted something else out of life, and I couldn't fault them for that. But I think, and again, given how old we were at the time, like it was a good time to think get off the train for them, and for me to kind of take a second to think about, well, what do I want to do, and what do I want now that this isn't as much of a thing. I think also um, having mentors is important, and whether that's a producer who takes you under his wing like Montana Macks did for me to teach me things and to kind of coach me, um, or whether it's dealing with people that are in other parts of the industry who just have general familiarity with just different ways of how to move. I think one thing that's helped me a lot is I'm just down to talk to all sorts of people. I mean, it's not just limited to folks in one area, one community. And again, to the point of like playing variety shows, I also made a point to just go to all sorts of shows, period. So my circle, it's like if it was a Venn
yeah, it's a little
diagram of
expanded now.
me,
Yeah.
yeah, it's just like you have, whether it's like dealing with people that are more in the art world, people that are more in like electronic music, or whatever the case, being able to have that sort of network, because you also don't know when it would be a good time to connect it all and to kind of make that sort of synergy happen. And I think that's one thing, as I get older and as I grow in this, I'm really proud of my ability to start connecting dots for my friends, for myself, and hopefully one of my goals is I just want to start creating bigger situations for people, or things that I think are impactful for them. And it's based off what they want as well. It's not just what I want. That
Right.
would be
Yeah.
ridiculous.
All right, so now I want to transition to talking about this fantastic album, Smoke Detector. And as you can see, we are joined by the one and only Iceberg Theory as well, the producer for this fantastic
Hey,
record.
hey,
And
thanks for
with
having
the
me.
man, for those that are unaware who Iceberg Theory is, go check out my interview, the very first interview of this entire podcast. So not only just that being a huge milestone, as many have heard, that album Dispatches from the Kali Yuga, Ice, and August Fanon. That's truly a great entry point to so much of the underground that we've explored on this show and that others have been exploring in their own musical journey. So really happy to have you on, Ice, and let's just get right into it. When we think about Smoke Detector, the first thing I realize is that you really crafted a sound, a vibe that feels really distinct from the previous albums that you've produced in full with Solar 5. That was fantastic. $2 Will, that country rap album, Red Man from Butte, which everybody knows.
I love that. Man. I love that one.
Batman
That was
from
so
Red Butte,
silly.
my mistake. Yeah, that's truly
It's
one of
so
my
silly,
favorite
that
albums
one.
of last year. Tokyo Cigar, and others. So curious, like, how did you and Rich conceptualize this album and kind of work together to blend your respective ideas together?
I think I got to give. I mean, I had the beats, obviously, goes without saying, but Rich really is the one who picked everything. Like I pretty much gave him, he had the run of the mill as far as what he wanted. So, I think there was like I don't know how many beats Rich could, you know, I don't know, there was like probably like hundreds, a couple hundred maybe or something. I don't know,
Damn.
maybe more, like there were a lot that was just like in the available folder. So he pretty much whatever was open, and it spanned over kind of a vast range of different stuff that I had been of times that I had been making beats, I guess. So I think that kind of helped where if you're picking from like a wide pool, because like let's say like if you're about honing in on one sound, for a couple hundred beats, you know, and then the next 100 beats you're doing something totally different, and someone goes in through the folder and you're looking at it, you know what I mean, and he's able to pick out. So I was kind of able to provide a pretty wide canvas. I think that's kind of
Yeah.
what I would say, that it was really open. Like there was like some country shit in there, like some stuff was even country in here, some soul stuff, some funk stuff, you know what I mean? Like a bunch of different stuff. So I'd say that kind of helped. And then he had the vision, but I think because that there were so many beats that, you could choose from, that helped kind of create something that was a little more eclectic and not something that was really like narrowed into,
Mm-hmm.
but still I feel like it's very cohesive despite kind of being like very eclectic. I still think that the album is definitely like greater than the sum of its, parts, because there's a very like cohesive vibe on it, and it really is a good like statement altogether. So, but I'm gonna give 90% of that to Rich for picking the beats. I mean, I was able to provide the canvas, but he really he painted the picture.
Yeah, and Rich, as before you jump in here, I kind of want to lead off with this, that's the clear aspect of this album that's super apparent on first listen, and that's what really jumped out to me was there's a huge amount of deep musical variety here. Like just it's almost like there's a section of this album, particularly Dream Life, which I want to talk about again in a different aspect soon. But it goes Dream Life, which is this like beautiful ballad, like if you guys listen to this album, like that one I hope jumps out to you. It's just like a sunny
I love
day.
that one.
it's
Yeah, that was
it's
that
so
was so
just like
good.
it
He
just makes
killed
me
he
so
killed that.
happy.
He killed that. He killed
Yeah.
that.
And it goes that into this like 8-bit gritty rap, like rap heavy song, 600 paid right after, then goes into that, I think that Have You Tried Turning It Off and On Again? Like just a ridiculous stretch of music, and they all work to your point, Ice. Like it's really cohesive. So my question for you, and maybe you could take this, Rich, and obviously Ice jump in. Did you guys make a concerted effort to try to make an album that just like pushes the boundaries and is like, okay, this is gonna be an album that's like eclectic as fuck?
I mean, I would say that so shout out Iceberg because it's not every producer trusts you to go through their vault, and he just literally was like, here you go, man, do your thing. And it was an awesome day for me because I feel like when he sent that stuff over, I hadn't had a chance to really think about music in like maybe a few weeks when I got that stuff, and or even to think about new stuff really. And so I this it was great to just sit down, roll a joint, and listen to as many beats as I could for like an hour and a half. And
Hmm.
it's, obviously he did an amazing job of like digging and picking interesting things to sample and or to choose from. And so that's big kudos to him for having such a wide palette in terms of the things that he was finding and appreciating and flipping. And then as far as my end of it, I think I think that the song that was most affected by that first session is, in a weird way, because there's no writing on it, was Life Goes On. Because I literally was smoking a joint listening to that song while there was a rainstorm outside my window, and I just was like, okay, I'm not going to rap on this song. I'm going to find like sounds of rainstorms and stuff, and I'm going to make like almost like a sound piece out of this, because that song specifically, I haven't I know I this is kind of my first opportunity to expound on it, but I looked at that song as kind of like a meditative, like sound piece, where like you can listen to it for as long as you want or as short as you want. If you make it to the end, there's a little bit of a payoff, kind of where you literally hear the clouds lifting, and it's kind of almost like you're ascending into some heavenly, divine, celestial body of some sort, which is great. But I think another part of the thing is, especially when you have that kind of repetitive, sad string kind of thing going on, is me personally, especially if you look at the projects I released previously, like How Do You Sleep at Night and Blue Beach. How Do You Sleep at Night specifically is like, a big like, wake up, motherfuckers. Things are going very badly. Like how are you just able to chill? And I think in the context of this being related to that record, that song is specifically a piece that I personally looked at as a way to kind of um I guess have as like a requiem for the things that we've lost, the people that have died in the last few years because of the inaction or just the I don't know, just the people not doing shit to help each other. And whether that's on a government level or like on like a interpersonal small community level. And I just felt like I wanted to have a piece of music in that moment that really was allowed to just be sad, and you're kind of allowed to kind of sit through the storm. And again, at the end of it, after you've had your moment to kind of work through the sadness of it all, there is there's hope at the end of it. I think that's kind of present in a lot of my work, is that it's not all gloom and doom, but there has to be a thing that gets you out of bed, that keeps you going. And I think in that case, I was really happy with how that worked. To your question about Dream Life and the way that all flows, if you saw the track listing, side A ends at Blankets. So Blankets is like a mid-album finale, right? And then Dream Life is like, I felt like it was the perfect side B, because it's like you're like, all right, and back to the show. Maybe you got a
Oh, that's
snack.
so true. Like it starts
And
off like
so,
you're
yeah,
so happy, start of the
uh-huh.
day.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But here's the other part that's funny. That song to me spiritually is a mirage. It doesn't actually exist in the universe that I've created with Smoke Detector, because at that part of the writing process, I had written almost every song up until, I think the only ones that I hadn't done were Party Time, There Are Two of You, and this song Dream Life. And so I was bunkering up at this sweet studio space that one of my friends runs called Friends of Friends, just by myself. I hadn't had time to just be by myself. And so it's the middle of winter, it's cold as shit. So I'm just sitting solo in the studio space for a couple of days. And with Dream Life, I'm just thinking, well, I've said so much about where I am, because I wrote most of this album, or conceptualized the lyrics of this while driving around the city and really being present in where I am specifically. And I just thought, well, I've said, I feel like all I have to say at this moment in time about this, with Dream Life kind of feeling so kind of like gloriously fantastical or like fantasy like. I was like, what's a fantasy world that I could create as like an escape from reality?
Mm-hmm.
And so the song itself, I just thought I did a little experiment. I just asked myself, if you could be anywhere in the world right now, time of your life, what would it be? And I thought about, right before the pandemic, I got to go on a really special trip with some friends of mine, that have been really important to my journey as an artist and as a person in Chicago. And we went out to Italy for a few weeks, and we were just, taking in food and culture and history and all this shit. And it was very much not with an agenda of, I'm going to shake this person's hand, so when I come back we're going to do shows. There was none, no scheming, no nothing, just living. And the song is specifically about the end of the trip, and the single cover is from the beach that we were walking on that day. So it's kind of like it's the end of the trip, but you're feeling pretty like it's that afterglow of a very special experience. And then 600 paid is like, snap your fingers. We're in the middle of fucking Humboldt Park. There's snow and there's garbage, and you're back in the city, and you got to be fucking back on your toes, and you're not on some beautiful fucking beach on the Adriatic Sea anymore. You're back home, motherfucker. Like it's game time. And like having someone like David, a convertible Ashley in the mix to like do that, I think like was a really great foil and partner to kind of trade off with. Like, I don't know if you saw the and now for something new video that I shot with him last year, but that was the the park I'm referencing. That's where we filmed that and stuff. So
I like the
I
way that you transit, like the way that seemed so intentional, and that's something we'll get in a little later. But I I really felt that, especially because the way the song starts, it starts immediately. Like the transition is abrupt and it sounds like very much on purpose, like snap out of it, we're back. And Dream Life, yeah, I just love that song because I do feel the really fun, like the sunshine happiness, but there's a really obvious hint of melancholy just in that exact way you said. Like something really great happened, you're reminiscing on a memory, but it's not here anymore. It's gone, but you're still happy about it, but you're also just like, because it makes me feel very weird when I listen to that song. And that kind of music is something I really like, but also it kind of makes me incredibly uncomfortable because it's like very nostalgic. I'm thinking of like good memories that are like no longer going to happen again, or for whatever reason, it's just a distant memory. But man, I just love and I love the way you explain that. If I pass this to you, Ice, there's one thing as you're thinking of like the beats you sent to Rich here, what did you see or what do you see in Rich as an artist that made you think he could rock with such a deep bag of different styles of music? Because you sent him, like as you said, so many different kinds of beats.
I mean, I think his music, I think what he did with him kind of speaks for itself in a way where it's like, he has so many, he's comfortable in so many different styles. And like when he's going to rap, he could, he could just straight rap and he's going to kill it. But he could do a whole song where it's just singing and it has, it's not like you're like, oh, this is like a rapper singing, but you're like, yeah, this is just a fucking good song. You know what I mean? Like, so there's, I don't know if like, there's kind of nothing that he can't. I mean, maybe I'm sure there's something that he'd be like, yeah, I don't want to do, but a lot of styles that at least stuff that sounds good to me, and then it was cool to kind of see what he was picking, like what was standing out, because it's never. I just find it's also like never what I think people are gonna pick, oftentimes. So that made me change my approach. I mean, I go back and forth on it too sometimes with people, where it's like sometimes I'll try to be like send a certain amount of beats and be like, yeah, this is what I kind of have in mind. And then other times I'm like, okay, here's the keys to the vault, like you said, and see what you want, And I feel like with Rich, because if I went to be like making him a folder of like stuff that he might pick, I don't even know if I would have picked these personally, So it's just like I feel like it's just trusting like people to know what they're doing, because like that's kind of the same, like with Fanon, like I've always, when he was sending me packs, he always sends me packs, and it's like it's kind of whatever you want generally, like like unless it's taken or something, but he's always trusted me to know kind of what I'm doing, and like I know what I'm gonna want to work with more than anyone else will, so that's kind of what I like to give, even if I'm sending something somewhat narrowed down, I still like to have I like to give people a lot of options, because I just find sometimes it's pretty obvious, like sometimes with $2, like I'll kind of know sometimes what he wants.
Yeah.
But even then, sometimes he'll pick some shit that I'm like, what the fuck is this? You know what I mean? So it's like, so in general, and that I'd say I'm probably closest with him as far as what I'm gonna send. But a lot of times I send stuff and I'm like, oh yeah, this and this, that's a short shot. No way they're turning it down. And then that'll be the beats that like 5 people turn down, and I'm just like, oh, okay, what the fuck do I know? Like I have no clue what's gonna like stick out to people. So I just know that, obviously something caught my ear in it that, if I sample it, then it's like, it's caught my ear. So, maybe it catches your ear, maybe it doesn't, but for whatever reason, it did catch mine. So, and Rich's style is just so broad. Like we were saying, like there's so many different sounds and so many different feels and vibes and, just things he does, that it's just like, you know, I just can't even see doing it any other way. Like, I don't know why, I don't, I don't know. I mean, now that this is made, I kind of know, if we were to do more, I kind of know, okay, I have a few things in mind, like more, because now I have a little bit better idea of where we've been and where we could go.
So to his point of um the diversity of how I approach this shit, that was probably my favorite thing about starting to send the initial demos, is because, like, especially like a song like Speed Bump, I think that really kind of fucked your head up a little bit, because, like, because I've made so many different types of music, it's interesting to think of just the different ways that I could freak something. So, like, something that somebody might traditionally think, oh, this will be a rap song, I'll hear something completely different, where it's like, no, I'm going to sing on this. Or a song that you might think someone would sing on, no, I'm going to flow on this. You know what I mean? I'm going to find my pockets. Or in the same breath, like, how can I hybridize this, where it's like, we'll have like
Yeah.
good flow, and then we'll throw in some melody, and then maybe like a power hook or something. I think that was honestly like one of the most fun things, was like playing around with song structure with this album too, to kind of serve myself, like for Dream Life, for instance. It's literally all verse until the power, I call it a power hook, because it's
Oh
just
yeah.
like
No, I
you
love
just
that.
yeah.
I
And
don't know how
I
that's the
yeah,
way to say it. It's a power
yeah,
because you have
it's a power
the
hook.
you're
Yeah.
the like you have backing vocals or like a double track or something. Very
Mm-hmm.
old school like power hooks of like the power pop like 80s,
Mm-hmm.
90s. And I guess that's something we can get into now. Like I we talked about Dream Life. I told you this, I think, offline. It felt very Beatlesque. Same with See You All the Time and the way
Mm-hmm.
that cadences with the hook. I'm sure if people who actually know music theory can maybe point to what that kind of feels like, but there's a swing to it that feels like the Beatles, except their creative peak was like the late 80s, because the beat's definitely not something they'd ever use. But
For
it's
sure.
just fucking so interesting to me. And I want to talk about your singing generally, because like that's such a significant part of your artistic repertoire. So what like what inspired you or like got you thinking like to incorporate more melody in your music, and what was going through your head specifically with those ballad type songs on this album?
I mean, so if you go back to the earliest of my music, which isn't publicly available, it's on private probably forever, some of it. But my very first album, Sweater Weather, there was definitely like a pop influence, and like an idea of like wanting to have like sung hooks on certain songs mixed with like power bars and stuff like that. So, like, that's always been an inclination of mine, and I think a lot of it stems from a conversation I had with my mother when I was like 17 or 18, and I was showing her some music, because my mom, she used to do music, and so she's got an opinion that I'll respect. And even if we don't agree, it's at least like, what did you think? And
Mm-hmm.
I think one thing that she said to me early on, when it came to hip hop records and what I was doing with it, is just like, she said, I think you could do more. I think this is fine, but I think you're holding back, and I think there's more interesting ways to approach this. And so, like, from a very early age, at least in terms of my music career, I was inclined to kind of explore a little bit more deeply what I could do. And keep in mind, like, I think experience is the best teacher. Like, this album is the sum of a decade plus of like experimenting with different approaches and trying different things. I think even just from a writing perspective, like, I went from writing things and rehearsing them a million times to I think about 5 or 6 years ago, about 5 years ago, I started a new process where and this also was made in large part because of my old engineer Joel Gutman, who's amazing. But yeah, he was able to book me time for super cheap, so I'd book like a 6 or 12 hour block, so I didn't feel pressure in terms of like, I only got 2 hours to do this, and like,
Yeah.
so I was able to get comfortable. And then what I would do is I would just go through beats in his studio and be like, all right, that's the one, load it in. And then what I would do is I would have him, I'd either try to, like, mumble a little bit and be like, all right, what way is there a strong phrase? It's almost like someone cold reading a room as like a medium or something, where it's like, I heard gyro, so I'm gonna go with gyro, or something like that. And so That became one process. I think another thing I started to do, especially when it came to vocalization and like doing more harmony type stuff, I started getting really into just making noises with my voice. And um from there, like trying to pinpoint exactly how I wanted my voice to sound before I did anything at all. Where it was like, I know I want to skip to the end almost, and then we're gonna fill it back in. And that honestly, like that partially came about through a session I did with this producer, Carter Lang, who's now gone on to like, work with SZA, and I think he co-produced Sunflower by Post Malone. He's just this amazingly talented guy. And I'll never forget, we had this one session where I came to his house, and he plugged a microphone into his turntable mixer board and just threw on like a Kid Koala instrumental and handed me the microphone and said rap. And I just started going and just freestyling, and then I kind of was running out of steam, and it was almost like a first thought best thought thing. And I at that point I'd never thought to like scream into a microphone before. I don't do well as like a super loud kind of aggressive personality. It just doesn't suit me. But in that moment, I was like, well, fuck it. Let's see what it sounds like. So I'm just like, wow, and it was very liberating because at that moment, it's like, wait a second, like I can test. It isn't about coming up with the final product in that moment. It's about to test to see where this could go. So then bringing it back to those sessions where I want my voice to sound a certain way. It's almost like you're like, doing test shots or like fire, just kind of just to see where things will land. And then you synthesize everything together and write the song. And so to bring it to this record and the songs that we were doing, I think it just came down to like for the more balladic songs, thinking about what the song was saying I needed to do, what made sense for me, and also what would be interesting given what I'd already previously recorded for the album. And then, kind of also just what would be fun for me to do. I think See You All the Time is a really interesting one, because that one, I freestyled that song. I knew the hook and I knew a couple of the lines, but I just sat down and just was like, all right, I told Steel Tipped Up, hit record. And I just locked in, and I did it in one take. I did it in one fucking take. And I think like maybe, and I think I listened back to it and maybe wrote it down and maybe redid it one more time. But essentially, like, I already had a long-term vision based off of listening to that beat like 1,000 times over a summer, that I knew what I wanted to do. And then throwing in the harmonies that I wanted to do as I went. I don't know. It's a certain level of planning, but then also being able to capture something in the moment.
In the moment, yeah.
And so a mix of taking present shit with past shit, and then being like, all right, future shit, let's go.
Yeah, it's like you've engineered a process that allows you to capture that while also allowing you to kind of have some structure, but again, allowing you to be present, which is really clear. Like there's a freewheeling energy to this album that it feels like organized chaos in a lot of ways, in the best possible way. I think the last question I have for you before you have to go, something I'm just curious about is like, especially when we're talking about See You All the Time, that's a beat I've never would have imagined you'd make, to be quite honest. And there's a lot of times I have that thought, like this is really different for you. But then at the same time, when I look through your past year, you've been very prolific. You've made beats that are very, very unique, and no album is sounding the same. So I'm curious, I believe your first full produced album was with Link Lone, late 2020. If not, it was the Mantis Miasma Theory. Like,
Yeah,
I believe
those are probably both pretty close.
Yeah. So
I probably have to look up like the like, I think like Rate Your Music or whatever. They have like the whole like list of like,
right.
everything, like the exhaustive list or whatever.
Yeah, but I think that's like
That's probably
yeah, that's
I think
like
it was the
close to
Link
the
Loan,
first.
Link Loan, maybe the or I don't know.
Sorcerer in the Vine, like October
The Cute
2020.
Owl might be close there too with the because we did the Untitled Soccer Mom EP around that time too.
Oh, right. Yeah.
That, and then the
Yeah, I love that title.
what up?
But yeah, so I was just saying, like, from then to now, what aspect of the craft do you think has gotten easier for you, or you think you've just generally improved on?
I guess just finding new stuff, like new things to sample, I guess, and just like new. I guess it becomes second nature a little bit more. Like I've definitely just been doing it longer, I guess. But the approach is pretty similar, I guess. But I have new
I'm always like discovering new little kind of genres, subgenres, and stuff like that that I kind of will go on a tangent with and try to flip for a while, and then kind of just see what comes of that. So, and then I think, as I keep going through that, I just keep discovering more. Like there's just more and more music that I could keep finding out. So I don't know if it's going to get to a point where where there's no. I don't know. It seems like there's always more stuff. I mean, there's no shortage of music, but I think most of it's just, I'd say, I don't know if my technique has really changed
Mm-hmm.
that much. I mean, I guess at a certain point, I started doing like which I talked a bit about in the Solar 5 interview with Dan O, that one that we were doing, where it was like, I started using like drum breaks a little bit more and stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
So at a certain point, because August, like, I got to give him the credit that he suggested that I do that, because at one point it was just like loops basically, like for a while, and then then I started doing a little more with that. So you know, and that now I've worked on that a little bit more, but generally the same approach. Like on some stuff I'll do a little bit more like with intros, maybe a little bit of change up stuff and here and there, but the approach is still generally about the same. But I think it's just finding those, finding the different sounds and figuring out where to look and how to, what different artists and kind of how far you could push it in a lot of different directions.
Yeah, no, I can definitely see like the even though your sound has definitely kind of like your sample sources have expanded, I think the one thing that's becoming a bit more refined that I've noticed at least is that there's more of like an identity of like, oh, I can, there's like, this is the Iceberg Theory spin on this kind of sound. Because even like on this album, there's a lot of like string sampling. There's a lot of kind of like yeah, more of a poppier feel that I haven't heard from you as much. But at the same time, it doesn't feel like abnormal. It feels like it fits. It's just a new style. And I just have to say thank you for making these beats because this is truly one of my favorite albums of the year. And yeah, I just want to say like congrats for all of that and appreciate you coming on the show.
Yeah,
Yeah, thank
Appreciate
you
you could
for
stop
having me.
by. Yeah.
thanks for making those beats, man. They're awesome. We
Hey,
should we
man,
should
yeah,
we
man,
should
thanks for rapping and singing on them, dude.
we should
Incredible. Like, I've just been listening to that over the past few days, like, since it's been out, just being like so happy, like with how it all turned out. I mean, it's really, like I said, I feel like just beats the sum of its parts. Like, I don't know, I keep going back to that, but it really just feels like something special. So, I'm really honored to be a part of that and work with
Mm-hmm.
you.
Yeah, man. No, I feel the exact same way, man. Obviously, it's been a bit of an unconventional process in a lot of ways, but I just really appreciate you for what you made, and then on top of that, just being a really wonderful person too. I know our communication could be sporadic, but I think what I appreciated most about this is you trusted me, and not everybody trusts me. Not everyone sees what I see. I sometimes see a little bit further ahead down the road than others. And so I just appreciate you just, trusting that I was going to deliver something. And if you didn't hear from me for, like a month, it wasn't like, I wonder if he's doing something. It's like, nah, he'll get to me. So thank you. Thank you so much for giving me the space to be who I needed to be to make this as well. And to do justice by your production. Cause like, I really, was really impressed by just everything I was hearing. I mean, look, man, if I wasn't impressed, we wouldn't have a fucking album right now.
Mm-hmm.
So,
Fair enough.
yeah, man, seriously, thank you so much.
Hey, you too, man. Be well, guys.
Peace.
Peace.
So Rich, one thing with this title, Smoke Detector, I've tried to think about what that could mean. And my theory is just like kind of based on the fact that there's a lot of variety. You're going in a lot of different places. Like it feels a bit explosive. And that's honestly something, to be clear, is not a way I would have described your last couple projects. I think there's a real intentionality with everything here. Like either like if it is sad, it feels sad. Like it feels very sad. Or if it's very chill, if it's chill, it feels very chill. If it's aggressive, like 600 paid or turning off and on again, that track, like it's very aggressive. I feel like you're really leaning into whatever vibe you're trying to paint. But that's kind of where I'm at. I don't know how that really relates to Smoke Detector, but it's something about like explosiveness. Like what is your take on what that title really meant?
So, I mean, kind of to my earlier earlier thing when just talking about writing in general, just thinking about phrases, words, some things just pop out at me. And like Blue Beach, I took that photo that became the cover, and it just was very clearly to me that it looked like a blue beach. So there you go. I mean, it's very literal. Boom. With this, I think I don't entirely recall how it came to me, but when I was listening to all the music that I had in a playlist and kind of thinking what it felt like to me, I think there's an underlying paranoia, and kind of just like a fear, and like something isn't right. And so Smoke Detector, if you think about it, it's you have it in your house to let you know if there's a fire, if there was a smoke, if there's smoke there may be a fire, kind of thing. And I think it's it's sort of I guess a way to be like a metaphor for just kind of where we are as people in this moment in time. It's just like I think there's a shit ton of smoke. So
Yeah.
I mean, in some places there's fire, but there's also a lot of smoke whether we see it or not. And so I think like I wish I had like a cooler answer, but like I think um just based off of what I was feeling while writing this and kind of while thinking about this, it just kind of fit perfectly where I'm just like, it just is kind of sort of an ugly title in a way, because it's not like it flows off the tongue like, oh, like some beautiful word. It's Smoke Detector, and so I like the blunt impact of hearing that, and kind of the lack of sexiness in a way, just because I would let that part happen with the music or whatever. But
Yeah,
um
the blunt impact is kind of what I was talking about how everything really
yeah,
punches you in the face with whatever
yeah,
vibe it is. And I think
exactly.
that resonates, and definitely the creeping paranoia, because that's like when we talk about dream life, that is a feeling I get, not paranoia, but this, it's like a lot of this album when I think about even especially like Life Goes On, um the final track, it could be purely a happy, you could put this in a purely happy scene in a movie and it wouldn't sound weird necessarily, not Life Goes On, but like See You All the Time, Dream Life. But it also could fit in the scene of a movie where it's like fake happy, like it's a fantasy that we're supposed to understand is like not real, and it's kind of like that's the point. Like Mr.
Too good to be
Robot, if you know
true.
that show, they have like scenes like that often where he's kind of like, it's very clearly like ridiculous. The guy is very, has mental, a lot of mental health struggles, but there's like this montage where he's all happy, he's buying his Starbucks, he's being a regular citizen, going to work 9 to 5, and they have this ridiculously like happy music playing, which is so cheesy. Not like this is cheesy, but it's that vibe where it's like
Yeah.
something's not right, but there's like this painted on happiness, and it's,
the
I
the
love that.
facade of
Yeah,
the
facade,
yeah,
exactly.
for sure. No, I think like to that point, I mean, it's almost like with like Dream Life or something, it's almost like too good to be true. It's like,
Exactly.
oh yeah, and meanwhile there's a big wave coming to wipe you off the beach, or there's a shark waiting for you to walk in or something. Kind of things are lurking around you. While it's almost like a really wonderful daydream in that moment.
Hmm.
So yeah, I think um yeah, that I think that settles that pretty thoroughly, I think.
Yeah, and I want to get into like a big song on this, the longest song, 7 minutes plus, Blankets, that features Yomi, Curly Castro, Samira Truth. This is truly, and as you said it earlier, that like is such a good, I didn't really notice exactly where it was placed on the track list, how it ends side A. That's a really powerful song, and I think you got some like truly one of my favorite Curly Castro verses on that. Samira Truth killed it, and Yomi, like I never heard of her, but I loved her singing on there. Like, what was the vision of this song, and like how did you kind of put it all together?
So I it's really interesting, yeah, because like I kind of stopped and started a lot on this album. Like I'd go like one song a week for like a while, and then I'd take like a month off, and it's kind of going as I go, creating as I went and when I felt it. And this one again was like one of the last songs that we did, I guess, along with Party Time and Dream Life, and There Are Two of You. And it was part of those sessions, and um it was interesting because around like I'd say like a few weeks before I sat down to actually do something with it, um, Curly Castro had hit me up being like, "Hey, like I'd love to get down on something if you're down." And I said, "Well, fuck yeah, that would be amazing." And so it was I'd sent him some things, and that was what he chose, was that the playlist I had kind of updated with songs and beats that were still going, and maybe ones that were blank. And so I was like, okay, that's cool, good to know. And I recorded my part, and then kind of had a space open for him, and then I have like my hook, my double hook at the end. And I said, okay, we've got a really nice compact song, once I get what I need from him. And I played it for a friend, and I wanted to get their opinion. And I was because I said to him, there's two things that happen here. Either it's great as is once I get what I need, or there's like a way crazier record here in terms of something that's far more intricate and like composed and kind of more thought out. And he was like, honestly, give option two a serious consideration. So I thought about what I heard and what could possibly go there. And so like Yomi, she's a great vocalist, but she also plays harp. So I had her come in and she played harp, and she sang,
Oh, that's
and that was
live. I
yeah, it
mean,
was
that's
there.
performed.
Yeah, that's performed.
Wow.
Yes.
I
And
thought
then
that was a sample in the beat.
no,
Wow.
that was the cool part, is because
Damn.
Ice provides the perfect like starter canvas, and then I modded it essentially with the other vocalists, of course, but then with like I was like, I want to hear you play some harp. So she played some harp. Mostly, I kept it in certain parts, and then for like the redux, I was playing around with positioning, because that's the cool part with what she was doing, is I didn't have to be super intentional of, oh, this needs to come in here. I could kind of be like, let's like chop a bunch of things up and just kind of like play with where they are and see what it creates. And I got really lucky that it was really simple to do that. And then with Samira, I forget how this all came about. I know we'd been familiar with each other, since last summer, in terms of like we met in person, and she's lovely and wonderful. And I had seen her. I feel I'd talked to her. There was some way I'd talked to her like previous to this, and in like the recent to when I was recording that. And I said, I've got this amazing, I've got an album I'm working on. I would really love if you would be a part of it. And she, just like Castro, gravitated to that song. So I had this moment where I'm like, am I about to just like have almost like a kind of weird sort of posse cut in a way? And I was like, well, of course I'm going to do that. So great. And then I was thinking like, well, what does this song need really to like bring it home? Because the hook is great, but then we've got more beat, and I'm hearing other things. And so Reno Cruz, he, we've worked on some music together over the years, and he's having a really good time playing guitar for the artist Lala Lala. But yeah, I just thought, let me hit him up, because I've always appreciated his pocket with the electric guitar. And I almost feel like he gave me some like quasi like Prince shit, because it just feels so like like Purple Rain levels of epic in certain ways, the way that he layers the guitar and really brings it home, especially because like it kind of starts with one, and then a second, with a second layer of it comes in, and just
Yeah.
the build of it and whatnot. So and the, out of all this, I mean, with How Do You Sleep at Night and Blue Beach, those are my first two experiences like mixing vocals and really taking command of this song is my first time mixing instruments. I'd never done that before, where I'm like starting to affect the actual music, not just like someone's voice on the music. So I had so much fun, really like true labor of love shit, in terms of like figuring out how to make this happen, putting it together, and then finalizing, kind of getting it to sound where I needed it to be. And
That's
I
really impressive, man. I have to
yeah.
say, because I just like the harp comment I made, the guitar, I thought all of these were part of the beat. Like all of it. I thought all of it was part of the beat. I had no inclination that this was something added, because it is mixed so like crisply into it. That's that's pretty interesting, because like sometimes I can tell and I don't always like it. Like sometimes it works where like especially like a guitar. I'm thinking of like some artists like Mike Dean, who's really like a legend at like adding like a really cool guitar solo melody added on to some kind of like very intricate trap beat or very intricate hip hop beat that like Kanye or Travis Scott have worked on with a bunch of people. That's like something he's great at. And sometimes you can tell it's like added on, but it's cool as a layer. But other times, some things can get added on by lesser artists, and it's just like this sounds cheap. This sounds like this doesn't fit. And I have to say that is truly impressive because I genuinely had no idea that was like additional instrumentation.
Well, thank you. I mean, that was kind of a big impetus towards me on the track listing and for like the credits or whatever, listing myself as an executive producer, because like obviously Iceberg, he did all the sounds. He definitely had like a big role in terms of like, I wasn't going to put out something he wasn't fucking with. Like we were going to have a conversation if there was. Luckily, we never had to have that conversation because, he was really happy with everything I did. But, in terms of like really molding the textures of this album, I think that's where I was like, I earned it. I'm gonna claim it. And obviously in the finishing process, MJC over at Filthy Broke, he did a really wonderful job mastering it. And
Mm-hmm.
that was a really cool process to link with him, because I'm still learning. I don't know everything, and as much as I may wish I did. And so we had some really interesting kind of remote sessions to kind of tune some things, like on that song specifically. He was teaching me some things that I'm using now for future projects. So that was a really awesome kind of knowledge exchange right there. So yeah, I'm excited to kind of build from here. The other thing, from like 2017 to like 2019, I was very quietly prolific in terms of like recording music. So I have so much in my vault right now that I almost feel
Mm-hmm.
like after kind of really scraping my whole being for this one, I might kind of turn my attention to like some stuff that's already done for a while, just because it's like it's good stuff, and I'd like to get that out there too. But yeah, like this sort of process was really fun and awesome, but it definitely takes it out of you in terms of like, where do I go from here? Because I don't ever want to bore people. I don't ever want to be
Mm-hmm.
predictable, which is, it sometimes hurts me because of my eclectic catalog. It's hard to pinpoint what exactly is this sometimes, whether it's like, because I don't know how far back you've gone, but like, I straight up dropped an indie pop EP in 2017 called Vegas. And it was like pop songs, very much
Mm-hmm.
like this could be in a commercial, or and some of the stuff was in stuff, and like it was a very strong departure from anything I'd done previously to that. And I think a big reason why I feel comfortable doing that shit is because I make no bones about what I am. And to me, I never divorce myself from my roots, which is that I am an MC.
Mm-hmm.
There's none of this, oh, I'm past that, or oh, I'm on, I'm not really a rap, but I'm more than a rapper shit. No, I'm a rapper and I also do other things, but it's,
Mm-hmm.
I don't shy away from that shit. Like to me, MC stands for microphone controller. You are controlling flow. So flow could be melodic, flow could be raps. It's whatever you want it to be. It just has to be you. It has to sound natural. I mean, like another thing, like my process for recording at this point, I almost always try to nail the shit in one take, because I treat it like a performance. We are capturing a performance and it needs to sound natural. I don't want it to sound cut and pasted or copy pasted. We need this to flow accordingly, just in terms of what I think will sound more natural and genuine to
Mm-hmm.
me, and what'll sound real for me. And so yeah, I would say in this instance, yeah, like that sort of mentality allows me to flow between genres and shit, because at the end of it, I'm still the same person. It's just me exposing a different side of myself, or fusing different things together to create a new side of myself that I can present to people.
No, that's amazing. I can definitely hear that fluidity again on this album with all the variety. Man, there's a lot to talk about with this record. I don't want to keep you for your entire day here, but the last thing I want to just talk about really quick, I just have to. On this album, there's a track called "There Are Two of You," and I just want to know what the fuck is that song? Like, what's the significance for it? Because it's like so mesmerizing, but I don't really feel like I'm understanding it. Like, I feel like it's kind of speaking to like because the girl's saying like there's two of you. Like it's saying like there's two sides of you. And I that beat by Ice, like it's like levitating. There's like a really beautiful like guitar main melody, but there's like this like like a
Yeah.
aura about it, man. I just love that song. Like there's so many moments on this, but yeah, like what's the deal with that track? I need to know.
So I think to talk about that song, you have to talk about the song that precedes it, Be Kind. Um, you know, uh at the end of that song, I write, write down who you are because of what you might do. They may not be so kind. And that I got from this writer, Sarah Kendzior. She tweeted something along those lines at the very beginning of the Trump administration in America. And she said, I want you to write down who you are, and I want you to very thoroughly have an understanding on paper of who you believe you are as a person and what your morals are, what you stand for, and what's important to you. Because what's coming and what we are currently living in is something that will test the boundaries of legality, of what's right and wrong. And
Mm,
as we descend into outright fascism in this country, I think it's important to understand that some of us are going, maybe a lot of us are going to have to make some very tough choices about what we do. And some of it may not be legal. And some people look at, oh, it's illegal, it's bad. Well,
mm-hmm.
sometimes the right thing isn't legal.
Isn't legal,
Sometimes
yeah.
it's like whether it's somebody chaining themselves to a tree so that, a forest can be saved, or someone blowing up an oil refinery so that we're not polluting, a certain area, things of that nature. Like, by the law, that's not okay, right? But in terms of preserving humanity, in terms of, providing dignity to your fellow man, and to look out for each other, I think sometimes those sorts of things we need to think about, does that supersede the law in terms of just being a human? And so I think taking that message, ending it at the end of Be Kind, because that's the other thing. I know for me, my way that I want to move around in the world, I want to be good to people. I want to be there for them. I want to be a positive person, and the world does a lot to make you not that way.
Mm-hmm.
And you kind of, to survive, you do things, and you get by, and it's very easy to get knocked off your square and to forget to be courteous, to
Yeah.
just baseline be nice to people, and I think we live in a super mean fucking time, man. Like, I I'm just amazed by our ability to be cruel and the different ways that it gets,
Social
redone
media
again. Yeah,
too, like
yeah,
it's incentivizes it. Sometimes I'm
yeah,
like, oh fuck, there's this post, it's so unrelated, but it's related to your point, but there's this post I saw of this person, oh, I forget what it was. Yeah, like it was during the finals. I've been really into NBA recently, and it's just a heart war. This is just a funny classic meme. This should be like where the internet is like funny, like a good thing. It's just like Jordan Poole, one of the players of the Warriors. There's this thing where this joke where he basically like he balls out like there's a bunch of baddies like looking at him, and he wants to impress them with this crazy thing, crazy handle and stuff like that. So someone made a meme like, oh, as soon as he hit that like half court shot in like game one or two, there was like this blonde girl, and they're like, see, there was a baddie in front of him, and then a viral like post is just someone shitting on this girl. So she's not a baddie if that's what you call a baddie. Like I'm like,
yeah,
and I literally commented like, this is so mean. Like, why are you
yeah.
doing this? I was just
It's
like dumbfounded. Like, who cares? She did nothing, and she's getting shit on by like hundreds of thousands of people now. It's like, you guys have a problem, man. Like,
Yeah, no, it's
this is
really
weird.
dark. It's super dark, and so I think, yeah, like I as part of me trying to become a mature, happy person. And I think, especially because, with my gig, I drive around the whole city. I'm in a bunch of neighborhoods that are, I mean, they're becoming more familiar because I go back every week, but like, it's definitely something where, like, if I'm not in my home circle or in kind of the nest, so to speak, I think it's something where I personally think that it's of the utmost importance to put out positive energy, because I very thoroughly believe that shit comes back to you, and may not always come back to you. And bad things happen to good people, people that are positive. There's no batting 1,000 in this shit. You still got to always be on your toes. But I definitely am I guess, in a mental headspace where I'm just really trying to make people feel good. My dad said something to me years ago when I was going through a certain level of crisis of character, where he said, make others glad and happy to be alive. And so when I'm feeling like I'm questioning my purpose, or I'm questioning what I'm doing here, I mean, and look, that's some really easy shit, just to say, hey, how you doing today? Okay, take care. Little things that let people know that they're seen, and
Mm-hmm.
just that you're rooting for them, even if you don't even know them. I mean, it's very small. I have all sorts of weird little chit chats with people that I'll never see again, and maybe they'll
Mm-hmm.
tell you a story. I don't know, man. Life's really interesting if you allow it to be, and people can be really surprisingly cool, in ways you wouldn't expect. So I think like that's that, just to give you some background of where I'm approaching this as a person in this moment. And then in the context of the song, as we look at the ways of the world, well, at a certain point, you know, somebody has to step up and do something that others might frown upon because it was the
Mm-hmm.
wrong thing to do because of the law or whatever. And it's just like, well, that's fucking dumb. So to bring this to your question about there are two of you, I think it's the most like staring in the mirror sort of way of assessing that, on one hand you're a lover, on the other hand you could be a killer, you know what I mean? And I'm not a
Mm-hmm.
killer, I'm a lover thoroughly. But I think understanding that there is that duality that I think does exist in people, where people are put in positions to do fucked up shit. I mean, you think kids that get sent off to war want to go off to war and
Yeah.
inherently want to blow people away? There's
Mm-hmm.
conditioning in that, whether it's
Mm-hmm.
in society or in your military training that you may receive when you're doing it. I think um there's a lot of programming that goes into that. So I think that piece, I think, is just laying it all out, that it's there, you know what I
Yeah.
mean? And then kind of letting you ruminate on that, much kind of like life goes on. I was struggling to think if I should put some words to it or kind of put my own thing on it, but I decided in the process of editing it as a sound piece that I really dug, other than what the dialogue is. I just loved how the music that exists in that clip interacted with the music from Iceberg's beat.
Mm-hmm.
And so I kind of think the energy and everything that needs to be said or felt really could be felt from
By
what
that, you didn't need to add
she's saying.
anything.
And then kind of just the way like the horns kind of come into kind of, it's like this mania, this kind of this it's almost like the other end of the, after you've gone through the eye of the storm where things are kind of wrapping up, and then when it finishes, it's see you all the time, and it's like almost like cue movie credits, you know what I mean? Because like see you all the time, like it's it's definitely kind of like a see you later folks kind of vibe in my mind, almost like the end of Who Frames Roger Rabbit, where they're all walking through the brick wall with all the tunes, and it's kind of this weirdly happy sort of thing. But like that song in particular, that one's really interesting to me, because I think it, somebody wrote that they thought it was kind of like a hopeful record. And in some ways it is, but it's also darkly cynical, because like it's in the hook itself. It's so good to see you. I see you all the time. Like I went from like going out and about like 3 to 5 times a week for shows and events and shit, to nothing, almost
Mm-hmm.
nothing the last 2.5 years. So I feel like so much of how I perceive people, or how I'm perceived, is through a phone or through the internet. And like
Yeah.
so people see me all the time, but they don't actually, like, we
See
don't have a
you.
meal.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so it was just it was just one of those things where I it was creeping me out, where I was kind of, it's like darkly funny, where it's like, so good to see you, I see you all the time. Because like I have people say that to me, where it's like,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, I see you on Twitter, man, I see you on Instagram, like, oh, it seems like things are going pretty good. And like, and no, there's no an insult by someone saying that. It's just the consistency, especially in this era when we have been so thoroughly separated, by the pandemic and by everything.
It's a
And
bit eerie.
yeah,
It's a
it's
bit
eerie
eerie.
as shit,
Yeah.
where it's just like, so good to see you, I see you all the time,
Mm-hmm.
and also how you say it, like
Yeah.
in the tone of it, I say it in kind of a cheery Beatlesque point of way, like way like you suggest. I in my mind, like when I was conceptualizing the vocal approach, I was like, we can get some like Beatles sweetness meets like Tom Waits and Leonard Cohen in terms of kind of like a world weariness and kind of like dreariness to it. And I think we accomplished that pretty well.
Yeah, like I
Um,
said, the Beatles
yeah.
thing because it sounds like something I hear off like Revolver or something, just in the
Yep.
way that like they would be like like that classic like Beatles. Like I don't know, again, I don't know music theory. I really wish I had more to say, but there's something in that cadence that is very classic pop of that time that is I've loved the Beatles like a lot of people. So yeah, that really resonated with me. And I'm glad you explained that song because that one really, and that kind of, I guess those final two tracks, I think it really spoke to me. So thank you for that.
Most
Um
stuff.
I want to, before we go, I want to just quickly talk about the Blue Beach EP because that dropped in 2021, and that was, I think, the project from you that really made me fall in love with your shit because
Hmm.
that you and Killer Kane like caught lightning in a bottle with that. It's so magnificent, and it's just 4 songs, but I've listened to that like 30 times, and it's like synced to my phone. It's always something I need to have on me. Like it's a great one. So what was the recording process for that project?
That one was so easy, and I think in terms of like I think it served as a really good precursor to Smoke Detector.
Yes, 100%.
So like, because I started Smoke Detector, I guess, sort of, you could say, like right after I got home after recording Blue Beach. So Blue Beach got recorded when we were in Massachusetts with my partner's family, and I had around a month to really just kind of do whatever I wanted. And I brought my equipment with me so I could set up shop in their house and just kind of mess around. And it was really a lightning in a bottle moment because Kane sent me 4 beats because even for this last trip that we just took, similar kind of thing where I knew I was going to be gone for a while. So I hit up a couple people and was like, hey, I'm going to have a month where I'm by myself and I'm going to have time to like I'm going to have space to listen to things and think about them in a really open way. And what else am I doing? I can try to knock out a bunch of stuff while I'm here. And so in that instance, it was really cool because he sent me 4 beats, and I just remember sitting back and listening to them, and just each one was speaking to me, and I could hear things that I could do, and just possibility, like literally just it's just capital P possibility, just all of it. And so I think um before I started getting into those records, it was actually pretty cool. The first song that I recorded was the joint that I did with Sleep Sinatra off of his joint last year. So that was like my test run to kind of get my shit together. And then Golden Beats, who I did the Be Water Be Glue record, I also recorded that as kind of like a little one off while I was doing it. And those were kind of like exercises to get me to the real deal, which was doing this Kane EP in this moment. And so like from there, much as with Iceberg and with anyone I've worked with the last few years, I think the big thing that I just make very clear to anybody I'm working with is my personal goal is for us to come out the side of this better than we were at the beginning of it. And I think for us in that moment, I think it was partially about like sending this out for recognition through press and stuff like that. But I think also as creators too, having like a different understanding of things, a different sense of things. So I think he was really wonderful to work with just because he's a mastering engineer as well. And he implicitly trusted me to mix it, and he was really patient and really wonderful at giving me good notes on how to kind of tweak things and get more comfortable handling things myself, because obviously how do you sleep at night I did myself too, but Max definitely did some shepherding of me in
Mm-hmm.
that moment, because that's baby's first time, first crack at the apple in that moment. So in this case, I had some familiarity, but wanting to refine that process to get better. And he was just so wonderful and patient with me. So I think with getting it together, it was kind of like let's sit down, let's write something, and let's go. And I think I ended up recording everything in the order that it appeared too. Like, you know, that's something I try to do if possible. It didn't work out with Smoke Detector because I ended up having to mix some things around a bit.
Mm-hmm.
But like, you know, It's Over, that was like one of the first days we were out there, and I just immediately was like, oh, I'm feeling this. Like, this is, you know, you can see the energy shift. That's like, I'm still like city mode. I've got that energy. I got that hustle. Like, so It's Over is very punchy. And then
Yeah.
by the end, when you get to Blue Beach, the finale, it's like there's a blissfulness to it, and acceptance, you know, kind of like a, you know, it's not pushy. It's not in your face. It just is. It exists. And you know, I think that to me is, I think, what was so special about making that is I was able to almost like to transition from one energy when I arrived to, like, at the end, it's like I've become not a different person, but I've become a different version of myself. And you know, it's interesting to see that kind of smooth line energy transition from high to low over 4 songs to kind of take someone on a mini journey. Because as I said, like, the project, as I dubbed it, was kind of like a vacation of the mind. So it's like, if you look at it through that lens, the first song is you just arrived, and by the end, you know, you've been there, and you've transformed a bit, or you've been able to reset and recharge, especially after an album like How Do You Sleep at Night, which is very like in your face and very much like questioning and kind of angsty, and
Mm-hmm.
very much like, what the fuck,
Yeah.
like, this is fucked. And then, you know, in my mind, you know, it's like, you gotta make time for yourself to be your strongest self, to be well rested, so that you can be as strong as you need to be for the people in your life and whatnot. So I think that was kind of interesting to see that play out, both in terms of the writing, but then also in terms of how that ended up getting ordered and everything. And
I
so,
think it's
yeah,
just
just
fantastic, man.
thank you.
I think that was just so fantastic. I'll describe it as like an album that's great for like a long shower. It's like, what is it,
Yes.
12 minutes, 11
Yeah.
minutes or something like
Hmm.
that. And or yeah, just like, even though I always recommend anybody listen to music on like the best possible headphones or speakers, but my JBL Charge does a decent job, and it's a great song to sing along to too. So it's like I really like having it in the shower, and
Yeah.
I agree. It's just it's a really good palate cleanser, like a mind cleanser. And yeah, and it actually very much goes into like Chili off the first track on Smoke Detector. Like when I heard that, I was like, because I was when I first heard this, I was like, I hope I get some Blue Beach vibes, because I just loved it so much. I didn't need to be the same, but because you obviously do like go different places, but you definitely keep that kind of ethos in a lot of these songs, where it has that type of singing that you do that's very unique, where it is very like soft, breathy, and kind of hard to pull off, to be honest. I find a lot of artists fail at that type of style a lot, but I think you killed it. And um
Thank you.
I know, last thing I want to get into just before we wrap up is, what are your future goals? Like, what do you see after this release, which I think has been very successful for you? Like, what do you see next in your career?
I'm gonna. I mean, I'm gonna keep pushing this album for a while. I've got a bunch of things I'd like to do with it, and I think it's in a world where it's here today, gone tomorrow in terms of people's attention span. I'm gonna do my damnedest to make sure that people fucking pay attention to this, and I'm gonna do what I need to do to make sure that people are tapping in, and that's gonna be probably tough and probably have some rough days doing that. But that's in the immediate where my head goes, in terms of like what I want to focus on. Because like writing wise, the good news is, man, if I sit down, like if someone's like, hey man, I need a song in a week, I am really good at being able to meet a deadline in that way. Like I'm good at, you know, being able to generate words and to,
Hmm.
you know, get people what they need. And I, you know, I do like collaborating and stuff, but I think in this moment, as I said, I also don't want to become predictable, and I don't want to just immediately jump into the next thing. Because yeah, like again, this was just such a natural progression of like I from idea to final form, you know what I mean? And so like I really want to make sure that these things are organic in that sense. I think like in terms of music, I've got a bunch of projects that, you know, as I said, I've got stuff that's on ice that I'm gonna reevaluate and see what future is there. I specifically have one album that is like, as far as I'm concerned, you want to talk, it's more like singing based, or like kind of more where my head's at, but it's like my album of hits, I guess you could say.
Oh,
So I've been figuring out for years how to make that one do what it needs to do, and I'm still figuring it out. And then I've got work on the way with good food. I've, working with Sleep Sinatra on some stuff. I've got a couple of, folks that are, kind of moving into the fold for me to start kind of like, building new things with, which I'm really excited about. But I think the other thing outside of my own music, the thing I really want to be able to do is help other artists. Like, I'm 34. I still very much love what I do. I want to keep doing this. I would love to before the pandemic, I was able to by myself put together like a 10-day 6-show tour, right? And that was a really important moment for me because I was like, there were things I would have done differently, but I proved that I could do this. And I think I loved touring. I do, I guess I love traveling still. I haven't really done a ton of it, for obvious reasons, but it's just something where I think um, I want to have another crack at that and to get back out there again before, I think I move towards a more domestic life situation, just because here's the thing, when I got a partner I love, I got cats, my mom and dad, they're getting older, I am entering a portion of life where I think it's very important that I am present for these people. I think in a way that younger me, when I was really out here hustling, couldn't be. And I think I have a stronger appreciation for what needs to happen in those ways. So I think as I possibly tone down some of my like moving and shaking and hustling and whatnot, I personally would love to start working with other artists kind of on their game plan and on their marketing and on their promotion. I mean, these are all things I have gotten a crash course on through the various hats I've worn over the years. And I think if there's a way for me to help somebody accelerate their path so that they don't have to, because I took the long way, man. I've still taken the long way. It's been 12 years, and it's a career, genuinely, and I'm very grateful for that. I think a lot of people need to understand this is a career. If you want to be the impactful artist that you want to be, it's not about a TikTok hit. It's about what can I actually sustain for a long period of time. So I think that helping people understand that path for themselves and, figuring out what they actually want and how to execute it. I think that's a path that I would love to explore more of. And I'm starting to get the opportunity to do. And to have people trust me in that is just so special and important. So that's, I think, working on my own shit, helping people do their shit, helping people be their best selves, trying to get me to be my best self. That's kind of, I think, the general roundup of what I want for the future.
Well, that sounds incredible. And I think we can end it on that great note. Thank you so much for coming on the show. This has been a phenomenal conversation. And
thank you, man.
Yeah, I just want to say, hope your summer's great, and check out Smoke Detector for anybody who's listening. It is truly phenomenal. One of the best albums of the year. And that's that. Peace out.
Peace, man. Thank you so much.
Take care. So there we have it, another episode of the Rap Music Plug podcast presented by QLC TV. I hope this episode gave you some new perspectives and insights into what the greatest art form known to man in hip-hop music has to offer. If you want to support the show in the most meaningful way possible, it would be my absolute honor to have you as a patron in the new Rap Music Plug podcast Patreon. Through this Patreon, you will be getting exclusive content such as bonus episodes, exclusive album recommendations, exclusive playlists, early access to episodes, and more. And above all, though, you will be able to support the show directly in a way that will not only justify the crazy amount of time I spend on this show already, but allow me to cover some of the expenses related to supporting all of these great artists that we cover on the show through the website, and will allow us to sustain and build on this amazing growth that the RMPP has experienced recently. Big shout out to Dano of Free Music Empire, Levi, Mahima, Jeff, Mitch, Dash Lewis, Pancake Cleaner, Trey, Noah, Justin, Brandon, Joe, Gavin, Matt, Teddy Faley, Jackson, CN, Slumber Logic, Fat Man Tomb, and Khalid for your generous support through the Patreon. I really appreciate it. So if you have any questions about any of the Patreon stuff, or just want to keep tabs on the show, interact with me on rap music and all the great stuff that we can talk about, follow me on Twitter and Instagram at rapmusicplugpod, or shoot me an email at qlctv.podcast@gmail.com. You can also rate and review the show on Apple Podcasts and subscribe on YouTube and Spotify as well. But that's enough self-promotion for this episode. I hope you enjoyed it. Peace.